Imagine this for a second. It's about 4,200 years ago, and the world's very first great empires. We're talking powerful, sophisticated civilizations thousands of miles apart. They all collapse at pretty much the exact same time. Is that just a coincidence, or is it the scene of a global crime? Well, today we're diving into a massive historical detective story. The victim, civilization itself, and the culprit was hiding in plain sight the whole time. So to really get a grip on just how big this catastrophe was, we need to go back to 2200 BCE. And you have to understand, this was not some primitive backwater world. No way. This was an age of titans. It was this incredible period of human achievement, of stability, of innovation. People were building wonders, and honestly, it must have felt like nothing could ever stop them. And the things they were building, just incredible. You had the Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia, the world's first empire, a huge, centrally run state. Over in Egypt, this was the Old Kingdom. These were the folks building the Great Pyramids. Then you go to the Indus Valley, and you find cities with grid-like streets and sanitation systems that were way ahead of their time. And all the way in China, the Liangzhu culture was engineering these massive, complex waterworks. These weren't just kingdoms, they were the superpowers of their day. Now, all of these incredible empires shared a secret to their success, which, it turns out, was also their greatest weakness. They were all what we call hydraulic societies. You see, their entire world, their food, their economy, their power, was built around the predictable, rhythmic cycles of water. The annual floods of the Nile, the Tigris, the Indus, the seasonal monsoons. These weren't just rivers, they were the literal beating hearts of these civilizations. And then that heartbeat started to fail. Suddenly, and it seems, all at once, these titans began to stumble. And this right here is the central mystery we're investigating. How could these mighty, independent civilizations, all at the absolute peak of their power, just start to fall apart in near-perfect synchronization? Let's start by looking at the crime scene in Akkadia, the world's first empire. It literally turned to dust. The rains just stopped, the crops failed, and a devastating famine gripped the land. We have their cuneiform tablets, and they tell this harrowing story of grain prices going through the roof and total social chaos. This wasn't just a bad year, this was a complete system failure that led to war and the entire state just collapsing. At the same time, over on the Nile, the very lifeblood of Egypt, it starts to recede. You get a series of low floods, which meant the rich soil wasn't being deposited on the fields. So harvests collapsed. That led to mass starvation and a complete breakdown of law and order. The pharaoh, who was seen as a god, suddenly lost all authority. The great old kingdom shattered into pieces, kicking off what we now call the First Intermediate Period. Basically, a century of pure chaos. In the Indus Valley, the collapse was quieter, but just as final. Now, we don't have their written records to tell us what happened, but the archaeology, wow, it speaks volumes. You see the cities start to shrink, their amazing sanitation systems fall into ruin, their vast trade networks just disappear. It's like the great urban centers were slowly abandoned as the monsoons that fed their farms just got weaker and weaker and finally failed. And when you lay it all out on a timeline like this, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Just look at these dates. The Liangzhu in China, gone. Akkad in Mesopotamia, collapsed. The Old Kingdom in Egypt ends. The Indus Valley cities start their decline. All of them right in the same narrow window of time. The timing is just too perfect. It's eerie. It points to a single powerful culprit, a killer that could strike across an entire hemisphere. Okay, so the case is laid out, the victims have been identified. Now it's time to get into the forensics. For decades, scientists and historians were on the hunt for this silent killer, searching for clues that were buried deep in the earth itself. I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What single force could possibly be so powerful, so widespread, that it brings down empires from the Middle East all the way to South Asia? It couldn't be a single war. It couldn't be a local drought. It had to be something bigger, something planetary in scale. And here it is. This is our culprit. Scientists call it the 4.2-Kiloyear event. And this wasn't just a drought. It was an abrupt, severe, and long-lasting period of drying out. Basically, a mega-drought that slammed a massive portion of the northern hemisphere. It was a sudden, absolutely catastrophic shift in the entire global climate system. And the case against this event is built on hard, scientific evidence from all over the world. These climate fingerprints left behind in nature. You drill into the ice in Greenland, and bam, the ice cores show signs of rapid cooling. You analyze sediments from the bottom of lakes, and you see a huge spike in dust, a clear sign of drought. Marine deposits in the Arabian Sea, they confirm the monsoons got way weaker. And deep inside caves, stalagmites hold this perfect chemical record showing a sharp, sudden drop in rainfall. The evidence is everywhere. Case closed. Okay, so we've got our killer, but how exactly does a climate shift actually destroy an empire? It's not like it was a single blow. No, it was more like a devastating chain reaction, a cascade of failure that just completely overwhelmed even the most advanced societies of the day. The easiest way to think about it is like a row of dominoes. The first domino to fall is the climate shock itself, a sudden, long-lasting drought. That, of course, knocks over the next one, agricultural failure and famine. When people are starving, they don't stay put. They start moving, which leads to the third domino, mass migration and conflict over what little resources are left. This chaos causes a total breakdown of social order, domino 4. And finally, the political glue holding the whole state together just dissolves. The empire fragments and collapses. The last domino falls. And listen, this isn't just a theory. We have testimony from the people who lived through it. This quote from a tablet found in Mesopotamia, it just gives a voice to all that data. This is what it actually felt like on the ground. A famine so bad that your fields are worthless, the price of food becomes impossible, and your only choice is to abandon everything you've ever known just to try and find something to eat. But the story doesn't just end there with collapse. Like any huge crisis, this one left a lasting legacy. And looking back at this ancient event isn't just some academic exercise. It's a warning from deep time that has some pretty powerful echoes for our world today. Because here's the thing about a crisis, it forces change. The 4.2K event was an absolute catastrophe, for sure, but it wasn't the final end of the story. In the ashes of that old world, new societies, new ways of thinking, and new political structures eventually emerged. Egypt reunified and became the powerful Middle Kingdom. Babylon eventually rose from the dust of Akkad. It's a story that shows us just how vulnerable we are, but also how incredibly resilient we can be. And that brings us right here to the final and most crucial comparison. The 4.2K event was a natural climate shift. Those ancient societies, they couldn't see it coming, they couldn't stop it, and they had very little technology to help them adapt. For them, what happened was pretty much unavoidable. But for us, the situation is completely different. Our climate crisis is driven by us. We have the science and the technology to understand exactly what's happening. So what happens next isn't a matter of fate, it's a matter of choice. So we're left with this really powerful question staring us in the face. The collapse of the Bronze Age world, it was a tragedy. It was an unavoidable collision between these incredible but fragile civilizations and a massive natural force they couldn't control. Today, as we face our own climate crisis, we have what they didn't, foresight and the power to act. So the question this ancient event asks us across 4,000 years of history is this: their climate catastrophe was a tragedy. Will ours be a choice?